The idea of sacrifice is one that is deeply rooted in our history. Humans have been sacrificing food, objects, animals, and even other people for thousands of years. When one hears the word sacrifice, it is almost immediately associated with religion due to the numerous sacrificial rituals present in almost every religion worldwide. Throughout the course of this semester, we've learned about how various philosophers and anthropologists view religious sacrifice and what they think its purpose is. The aim of my project is to take all that we've learned and apply it to the real world, hopefully being able to find which one of these theories of sacrifice is the most accurate. Over the past few weeks, I've traveled to multiple places of worship and interviewed multiple members of varying religious communities in order to gather the information required to answer this question. So join me as we delve into the fire. Before we get started, I'm going to give the definition of sacrifice that we learned in class and that I gave to all of my interviewees. This definition is based entirely on Edward Tyler's model of sacrifice and consists of three parts: the gift, the homage, and abnegation. The gift is what most people think of when they think sacrifice: fire and blood, burning food or effigies, killing livestock or domestic animals, and even sacrificing people. This stage is purely physical and involves destroying something in return for something of equivalent value from the god or gods. The homage is more abstract than the gift and involves a sacrifice of time. This includes, but is not limited to, prayer, song and dance, art, or some communal event. This sacrifice of time is usually an action or a performance rather than an object, in exchange for something of similar magnitude from the god or gods. The final stage of Tyler's model is abnegation, denying oneself of pleasure in order to satisfy a higher deity. This is much more about the thought than the action, and some examples of this are Lent or Ramadan, where one gives up eating in order to show reverence in return for blessings or good fortune. With that definition in mind, let's take a look at some of the theories. We'll start with Sigmund Freud. He thought that religion in general was a sort of mass neurosis, and that sacrifice was used to relieve anxiety and trauma and bring pleasure to oneself. René Girard, a more contemporary philosopher, believed that sacrifice was a ritual used to quell humanity's natural violent tendencies. The act of sanctioned killing or destruction allowed ancient people to not turn on themselves and wipe out society due to their violent inclinations. Nancy J., a 20th century feminist scholar, believed that sacrifice was a tool used by men in order to uphold the patriarchy, sort of as an induction to society that only males could participate in. Although very different from one another, each taken into account individually makes almost perfect sense. The one we'll focus on, however, is Emil Durkheim's theory of sacrifice. Durkheim strongly believed that sacrifice was a tool used by humans in order to form society. By sacrificing individual freedoms in return for governmental protection and regulation, ancient people were able to form concrete nations, preserving society and bonding with their communities through ritualistic acts of sacrifice as well. This theory resonated through all of my conversations, more strongly than any of the other philosophies I've just mentioned.
A big part of how sacrifice and that communal participation has historically affected Mormonism, or kind of created the culture that's around it today. This whole kind of idea that now we have this community that everybody had to put into, so that's just who we are, and it helped create an identity.
In fact, John 17, another text, is the last prayer that Jesus prays. It's the longest prayer recorded in the Second Testament. It's the last prayer he prays before he leaves, is subsequently arrested, and begins his trial. And that last prayer that he prays is this: that, Lord, make them one as we are one. So even the idea of unity means that I am sacrificing some of my individuality to be a part of a body of people in something collectively.
In Tibetan Buddhism, you can see remnants of that sacrificial gift, in the sense that we have rituals where we offer small, they call them torma, which are small little like flower cakes that you offer out to nature and to this kind of thing. That's very uncommon in other kinds of traditions. But within the Tibetan tradition, that's definitely a very community building kind of situation. Everybody knows what it is. When there's a big event that has a lot of these offerings to make, people come together and help to do this. There's at that level, that's definitely a part of it.
Of observant Muslims. And I think with Ramadan, it's very much, Ramadan is what I love to say, it's both very intimately personal, but also very communal as well. The communal part of it is that we're encouraged in Ramadan to break bread with each other, right? So it's called iftar. Iftar is literally the fast breaking, and we do it at sundown. And of course, one can do it by themselves, but there's great encouragement in Islam and Muslim teachings that you do it with other people, that you do it with your family, you invite your neighbors, you invite, for example, I mean, I'm a college chaplain, we make it a regular practice to invite, we tell people, bring your roommates, bring your suite mates, bring people that are in your student clubs, with you, invite faculty members for that matter. And then in this day and age, because I also do a lot of interfaith work, it's the idea of reaching out to other religious congregations. Invite people from the shul, from the temple, from a synagogue or a Hindu temple or a Sikh gurdwara or a Christian church congregation. And so that regularly we're sharing. And at the end of the day, iftar is essentially one nice meal that you're breaking bread together with people. And I believe that breaking bread has deep primordial wisdom to it, right, with each other, that it builds bonds of, it engages with other people. That's how you start relationships. And those relationships will, if they're managed well, will develop into friendships. And so that's really built into the idea of these major rituals in Islam.
Also, what's really important to understand is sacrifices served a political economic function as well, right? So oftentimes when we're looking at sacrifices, think about it as taxes. It's a lot easier to bring your sacrifice, your sheep, over to your local priest rather than bring it all the way down to Jerusalem. But the reason for pushing that central worship in Jerusalem and that central place of sacrifice was to maintain a strong central government, right? It's not dissimilar from like the Federalist Papers. We had 12 tribes in Israel, 13 colonies in America, right? And the authors of the Torah and of the later books were those southern authors in Judah, in Jerusalem, who were pushing for centralized worship in order to maintain that unity of the 12 tribes. And so sacrifice was really important for that political cohesion of early Israel. It was important also for the social and moral and communal identity in that way.
From the Mormon churches in the plains of Utah to the Buddhist temples in the Tibetan mountaintops, what can be taken away from all of these ideologies is that in almost every religion, there is some inherent sense of altruistic sacrifice. Whether it be a physical gift, an event, or an act of abnegation, there is always some underlying will to give back to the community and become one as a society through sacrifice. These varying sacrificial rituals developed throughout the world in isolated pockets, yet all shared the same sense of altruism, proving Durkheim's theory correct. The moral of this story is as follows. Even if you aren't a religious individual, there is a plethora of information pointing towards the importance of the role religious sacrifice played in creating and maintaining society as it is today. The study of religion is something which should be taught in institutions worldwide in order for the generations to come to learn about what made society what it is today and how to continue to uphold these values far into the future.